Artificial intelligence is increasingly part of many decisions that impact all of us, from whether we get approved for a loan, interviewed for a job, whether the police show up at our doorstep, and what kind of medical treatment we might receive. I'm Katrina Ingram, a student at the University of Alberta in the Master of Communications and Technology program. And in early 2019, I completed a project looking at ethical codes for artificial intelligence. Writing an ethical code seemed to be the first wave of response to the variety of ethical issues in AI. And in 2018 and 2019, it seemed like everyone was forming an ethics committee and writing an ethical code. And that work left me wondering, how do we get from those 30,000-foot ethical codes down to something that can actually be applied? So applied ethics became the focus of my capstone research, and I called this project Ethically Aligned AI. And I started a blog about this work last fall. For my literature review, I looked at various areas where we might find ethical issues within the development of AI. And I divided this into three big sections: data, math, and people. And while I don't have time to fully unpack these areas in detail, here's what I learned. Data is a primary input for AI, and often bias is encoded into the data. Math is not neutral, and the choices made in constructing algorithms have ethical consequences. And the people making AI, the funding, as well as the socioeconomic and political system in which it is made, also involves many ethical challenges. I decided to work on this question of applied ethics in AI within the context of healthcare, and I picked this area for a few reasons. Healthcare is this high-stakes area when it comes to the use of artificial intelligence. So there's lots of upside if we get it right, and a lot of downside if we don't. Healthcare also has a rich tradition of ethics, and in fact, many ethical codes of conduct arose from issues in medical research, such as the Nuremberg trials or the Tuskegee experiments. So there's this deep appreciation and understanding for ethics within healthcare, and I felt that might extend to the use of AI in healthcare. Here in Alberta, we're also setting the stage for AI with the implementation of Connect Care, which brings 1,300 siloed data systems into one system to advance the electronic health record. And at the national level, CFAR was rolling out its pan-Canadian AI strategy, and healthcare was the first vertical that it would focus on. Then COVID-19 hit, and all of this seemed to have gotten much more urgent, with new issues around public health surveillance. I wanted to understand how AI developers working on healthcare projects think about ethics in the context of their actual day-to-day work. I interviewed 5 AI researchers, mostly PhD students, working on healthcare-related projects, and I followed that up with a focus group to explore some tools that might be helpful to incorporate ethical practices into the development cycle. And I'll add that 4 of my 5 participants were computer science majors, and 1 was not. And that happened a little accidentally, but it became an important detail. Here are some of the findings, and in the interest of time, I'm just going to point out 3 quick highlights. First, most of the AI researchers in my study were exempted from their ethics approval process. Either someone else did this work, or because they were working with previously cleared data or public data, they did not need to go through the usual research ethics board review. Secondly, there was a disconnection from the data. Since AI researchers use secondary data sets, and these data sets are often used and reused without a lot of understanding about where the data came from, it's kind of like the data just arrives, and the people in my study were not always aware of the actual origins of their data. And this led to an abstracting away of the people who were involved in generating this healthcare data. Lastly, there's this idea of technical accuracy as an ethical duty. And all of the computer science majors were really aligned in this belief. And that also aligns with this point about deep learning being imperfect but necessary. So even though in our focus group there was a lot of concern about the fact that deep learning is not actually explainable, which can lead to ethical issues around AI making decisions, the computer science majors felt the trade-off for accuracy was worth it. And this wasn't the case for the 1 non-computer science major in my study. This is a very quick putting it in perspective slide. I think it's important not to oversell the work. So while there are a lot of interesting findings, the scope is limited and there's much room for further work. And in particular, I think there is much work to be done in the area of ethics education for computer science students, as the ones I spoke with had no formal ethics training. That's the end of the short video, but the beginning of a bunch of next steps. I'm working on an ethics toolkit, as well as launching a consultancy to help organizations navigate these issues. I'd love to connect with you, so please reach out if you're interested, and thanks for watching.